Well, welcome everybody. It's great to see you here. And today we're going to have a whistle-stop tour through the Wollstonecraft live experience. Now, this is a theatre and performance event. It's a way of finding out about Mary Wollstonecraft and hidden histories, lesser-known stories of women from history. We are a local theatre and performance company, Fragments Monuments, and we use theatre and film to find out about and tell stories of lesser-known people. The Wollstonecraft Live Experience is a performance project that started in the Stoke Newington Summer Festival in millennium year 2000. My kids attended Newington Green Primary School, and the librarian showed me a history book there by Pat Haynes, which mentioned Mary Wollstonecraft. There's just one line about her and the dates of her school for girls on Newington Green. She knew I would be interested and that she'd lived and worked on Newington Green. My mother had Claire Tomlin's book and I'd leafed through it, but now with the help of Pat Haynes I got stuck into Wollstonecraft and her history. I'm a theatre director and producer, and my company Fragments Monuments Performance and Film researches and uncovers neglected and erased histories of women, non-binary and trans people. When I picked up Haynes' book, Wollstonecraft was practically unknown. If people knew anything, they knew about Mary Shelley. She wrote Frankenstein, that you probably know. We decided early on to never mention Shelley and concentrate on raising awareness of Wollstonecraft's legacy worldwide. We are in the right place for this talk. The Hackney Archive holds an original version published in 1792 of The Vindication of the Rights of Women. That's 232 years ago that book was published. You'll have a chance to have a look at it closely. Working with Hackney Archive over a number of years, we were the first to bring this original volume of Vindication of the Rights of Women to Hackney Museum. We were delighted to have the opportunity of working with the book itself, as it had the power to connect us to both Wollstonecraft, her life as a writer and activist. In response, we made our own sister book explaining our retrieval of her legacy. We are proud to have deposited this limited edition art book in the archive alongside Wollstonecraft's famous text. We show our performance story as a travelogue, following in Wollstonecraft's footsteps as the first woman travel writer. So this is a story of Wollstonecraft and her time on Newington Green. Why did we deposit this art book in the archive? The art book is an exact replica of the marbled outside cover of Wollstonecraft's famous text. It's also exactly the same dimensions. So by depositing this in the archive, we've made a link between the 21st century and the 18th century to mark the relevance of Wollstonecraft to us today. Our gift marks Wollstonecraft and her relevance to us as in the 21st century and creates a dialogue between the 18th century and today. In this way, we make a trans-historical link across time. We call this a living monument because our memorial to Wollstonecraft amplifies her story through connection and participation, in contrast to the fixed bronze monuments that we see in public spaces. How did we grow the living monuments methodology? Global majority artists, for example Sonia Boyce and Shyla Berman, have inspired the living monuments methodology. Acknowledging the intersectionality of this work, it's important to note at the outset that a living monuments methodology owes much to these artists on their retrieval of black history. For example, Sonia Boyce foregrounds the lives of 5 black female musicians through video, collage, music and sculpture in Feeling Her Way. Shyla Berman, on the other hand, challenged the white supremacy of the Tate Britain Gallery by creating an illuminated facade for the building in 2020 to 21, combining a range of images from Hindu mythology, Bollywood activism and childhood memories of Blackpool, attracting massive attention and footfall. Did anyone catch this at the end of COVID at the Tate? This was a very celebratory and participative public art experience. Some of you might know Top Girls by esteemed British playwright Carol Churchill. In this play, women from different periods of history discuss their lives around a dinner table. Space and time collapse, showing how women's experience across time and place intersects, creating weight and dimension to their lived experience. In another medium, American feminist artist Julie Chicago created ceramic plates representing and celebrating women across time and place for the dinner party, building their achievements and lives on the shoulders of the women before them. Scottish writer Cicely Hamilton assembled women from history in her play A Pageant of Great Women as material evidence in a court case to prove why women deserve the vote. Making a trans-historical link across time in 2000, Fragments Monuments brought Mary Wollstonecraft, played by Di Sherlock, to Clissold Park, where she promenaded in role, stepping out of the 18th century to visit the 21st century. The next step was to commission a full-scale and site-specific multimedia play about Wollstonecraft's life, drawing on her intimate letters and published works. Wollstonecraft Live by Carty Fine was born, and in 2005 we cast not just one Wollstonecraft but 3. In Wollstonecraft Live, the play Wollstonecraft is making a biopic of her own life, and in this way owning her story, creating her story for herself. So why is it important to elevate Mary Wollstonecraft? She argued that all humankind should have equal rights and that benefits for one are benefits for all. She was a very early British feminist and held a firm belief that women's rights are human rights. She passionately argued for the rights of all, including working class men who pay for the support of royalty when they can scarcely stop their children's mouths with bread, said Pankhurst, relevant to today, I think. These are very contemporary beliefs and chime with, "We have more in common than divides us," in the words of Jo Cox. We've got a few slides here of the variety of ways that Wollstonecraft is represented, and this is just a very small selection. You'll know the John Opie portrait, 1797, that's in the National Portrait Gallery, and also by Opie, this 1790 portrait of Wollstonecraft. Now on March the 8th, 2013, Stewie, street artist Stewie, brought Wollstonecraft to Newington Green. We were surprised to wake up on March the 8th in 2013 and find Mary on the side of the Newington Green Chapel. This artwork is the first one to go into the government art collection of a stencil of street art. And we use the image, Stewie was very generous and let us use the image to raise funds for the Mary on the Green campaign for a memorial to Mary Wollstonecraft. Some of you might know her tomb in St Pancras, and people often go there and lay flowers on her birthday. Quotes from Wollstonecraft published by us. Right, now it's my great pleasure to introduce Neda Parsa, my new neighbour from Iran. Now Neda is going to read for us a short bio which was written by one of our actors in developing her role for Mary Wollstonecraft. Neda.
I am an 18th century feminist, writer and mother of Mary Shelley, author of Frankenstein. I was born in London, but my father turned to drink after losing the family fortune and scraping a living as a farmer in Essex. Together with Fanny Blood, I ran a school on Newington Green, where I was soon welcomed by Dr. Price into the local circle of dissenters. The school folded when Fanny got married. After a spell of governess in Ireland, I was befriended by Joseph Johnson, who set me up with a job. My masterpiece, A Vindication of the Right of Woman, was a fiery feminist polemic railing against the bitter bread of dependence, which kept women either domestic slaves or alluring mistresses, in a time when they were denied civil, political, and sexual rights. My demands that women be restored to be their lost dignity and labor prompt Walpole to call me a hyena in petticoats. In my private life, I opted to passions as opposed to the code that dictates of behavior, which led to a disastrous relationship with the American Gilbert Ilmay. The birth of our daughter Fanny while alone in Paris during the Revolution, which I also documented with my account, forming the basis of Carlyle's French Revolution 40 years later, and a suicide attempt. I later married philosopher William Godwin and died a few days after giving birth to Mary.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Neda. Okay, so now we're going to give you cards, and we were wondering whether you'd like to work in pairs, because we're going to access the Wollstonecraft Walks app, which has got a lot of materials on it, and primarily has got a walk around Newington Green. So I'm going to give you a card. If you'd like to work in pairs, and just scan the QR code on the back. Great. So you've got the Wollstonecraft Walks on your phone now, and you'll see that the walk guide is there, and lots of information about Mary Wollstonecraft. And the bio that we've just heard is all written under Who is Mary Wollstonecraft. And then you can go through the walk. You can either do it at home or you can do it round Newington Green. And there are a number of readings at different places around Newington Green. Some of them are Wollstonecraft's writing, and some of them are writers, for example, Virginia Woolf, Bell Hooks. There's a variety of writers there. We also have podcasts, which you can see from the menu. It has got the selection of readings by Maya Angelou and you can hear those read by actors. And there's various materials on here, including short films taken from the work. And there's a soundscape which you can listen to as you visit Newington Green and have a look at the green, find out about its history, and visit the sculpture to Mary Wollstonecraft. So here we are today at the CLR James Library and in the Hackney Archive. We want to thank Hackney Archive for getting this great material out for us, and including the art book. We've also got some materials on Newington Green and the dissenting community, and on the Mary on the Green campaign for the first memorial in the world to Mary Wollstonecraft. So we're discussing the Wollstonecraft live experience, and you have the app now and a card to access it. So hopefully you can have a walk around Newington Green and also look at all the material there. The context for this work is in feminist performance and recovery to challenge the systematic erasure of women's experience. It's a part of a larger project which is called Missing Matter, Approaches and Challenges for Feminist Historical Recovery. And in that project, it's noted that feminist historical recovery is transforming the cartography of the past, as well as the masculinist practices of history that for millennia have erased women from public memory. So this idea of retrieval and refinding and making our own stories and making your own stories. Cultural journalist and Latin scholar Charlotte Higgins recently described history as inquiry, and that's the idea that we've got a possibility to inquire into history and create our own stories for ourselves and produce a history or herstory from a contemporary perspective, noting the relevance of these legacies for a 21st life and times. There are multiple versions of her story, depending on what standpoint, and in the process of historical inquiry, we create and produce our past and present realities. One of the books that we've got on show here is Wollstonecraft Live and the Story of the Sculpture, which we will look at when we get to the table here, when we look at the materials here. In the meantime, I'm just going to talk about Wollstonecraft and how she helped people to get the vote. So Sylvia Pankhurst, suffrage campaigner and East London activist, notes that as one of the first women to argue for active citizenship, Wollstonecraft wrought the women's claim for emancipation, launched in 1697 by Mary Astle. The claim gained a remarkable impetus when John Stuart Mill initiated the first debate in the House of Commons on women's suffrage in 1867. Mill lived on Newington Green himself. About 125 years before Nancy Astor, the first woman to take her seat in the House of Commons, Wollstonecraft's belief that the rights of women and men are one and the same led to the idea of women's suffrage, the right of women to have a vote, and therefore the right to be in Parliament. Wollstonecraft's influence in politics and the battle for full franchise are embedded in her belief as a radical philosopher and thinker. She understood the strength required to resist the multiple strategies used to quiet the dissent and activist voice, and worried she may not be taken seriously. She said, "I may excite laughter by dropping a hint, which I mean to pursue at some future time, for I really think women ought to have representatives instead of being arbitrarily governed." Mary Beard, Cambridge Professor of Classics, says, "Every woman who wants to make an impact on the way this country is run, from the House of Commons to the pub quiz, has Mary Wollstonecraft to thank." Beard supported the Mary on the Green campaign to build a memorial to Mary Wollstonecraft because she believes Wollstonecraft had such impact on so many areas of our lives today. Now, Wollstonecraft met her mentor, Richard Price, on the Green. He was a Republican and a cleric, so we've got the background of the French Revolution happening, and that really inspired Wollstonecraft in her writing. Price was a Republican, and he was under house arrest for his support of the French Revolution. He encouraged Wollstonecraft to focus on her writing, and he introduced her to the radical publisher Joseph Johnson. Newington Green offered Wollstonecraft the support she needed to become a successful writer and to fund, very important, both her life as an independent woman and to support her extended and dependent family. At her school on Newington Green, she tested her ideas on education. In her view, education is very, very linked to citizenship, emancipation and independence. A critical mass of dissenters were drawn to Newington Green, where Wollstonecraft debated and developed her conviction that women should have representatives in Parliament 100 years before the suffragettes. In 1787, she said to her sister Everina, "I'm going to be the first of a new genus. I'm not born to tread in the beaten track." The new track beaten out by Wollstonecraft resulted in her most famous book, A Vindication of the Rights of Women. Written during her early revolutionary burst of activity in France, this determining publication moved Wollstonecraft into the world of political discourse. She attacked education and wanted to rid society of the monarchy, church and military. Johnson published her book in 1792, the same year as the Tuileries were stormed in Paris, and Tom Paine, who she had met at Newington Green, published his book, Rights of Man. As the first woman travel writer, Wollstonecraft lived in Paris during the Reign of Terror. She left Paris for safety and had her first child out of wedlock. As a single parent, she broke the mould for women in the 18th century and was castigated by even liberal sections of society. Her exciting and passionate life was used as a weapon to tarnish and reduce her legacy. She visited Lisbon and went to Norway and Sweden on business. She cultivated an outward-looking approach and deep understanding of class oppression and what the role of the post-revolutionary citizen might be. Interdependence was central to this. Wollstonecraft expert Barbara Taylor argues that her understanding of partnership and dependence is central to her role as a trailblazer for women as citizens with the right to vote and be members of Parliament. While she emphasised women's responsibility to educate the children of the future, the next generation, Wollstonecraft undoubtedly imagined her independent woman as a fully participating citizen. Because of her travels, she had a global view of the world and argued for individual responsibility and an enlightened view on civic life. As a citizen of the world, she understood the complex links that join people, the importance of a proactive approach to life, and the fragility of human experience. The representation of Wollstonecraft's life as the first woman travel writer, single parent and human rights activist in her husband William Godwin's posthumous memoir, of the author, memoirs of the author of The Vindication of the Rights of Women, published only 4 months after her death, served to catapult her legacy and life into hiding. So his memoir erased her life. Her publishing, her success was palpable when she died giving birth to Mary Shelley. But in the wake of the memoir that her husband wrote, she was erased. Her passion, her tumultuous life, all too much for her readership at that time. In the 1970s, feminist scholars began the process of bringing her back to life for the 20th and 21st century. Early on, it was realised that Wollstonecraft's life needed vindication. It had been so erased that it had to be vindicated and brought back. Susan Todd makes that, Janet Todd makes that point. And Wollstonecraft herself realised that her passion and her life were also politically charged, that she couldn't be seen in the way she wanted to be seen by some people because of her choices in her life. Feminist historian Janet Todd concludes the attitudes to Wollstonecraft over 2 centuries reveals the patriarchal attitudes to women and becomes a history of 2 centuries of both feminist and anti-feminist thought. So we can see the sort of backlash as a quantity of anti-feminist thought, and we can see Wollstonecraft's work in terms of feminist thought, so we can understand both sides of the coin. Connecting with her radical voice and calls for women to have power over themselves, Fragments and Monuments memorialises the founder of feminism in multiple ways. The most recent is the app that we've just looked at, Wollstonecraft Walks. Wollstonecraft's insistence on usefulness and dissent, debate, and the importance of human rights couldn't be more relevant today, so onwards we go, recovering her legacy. As Virginia Woolf wrote, one form of immortality is hers undoubtedly. She is alive and active. She argues and experiments. We hear her voice and trace her influence, now among the living. Great. So now we go into a part where we look at the materials that the Hackney Archive have provided for us. So if you'd like to come around the table, if you want to have a look through this archive, which is the story of the sculpture on Newington Green, which is also written in this book here, which is available from Aurora Metro publishers. So this has the play Wollstonecraft Live in it, the script of Wollstonecraft Live, and then it also describes the campaign for the sculpture to Mary Wollstonecraft. We used theatre and performance to raise awareness for Mary Wollstonecraft over many, many years as a part of that campaign. And in this book here, we've got the play Wollstonecraft Live, and that play is actually beautifully researched using her writing. Okay, so we've had a look at this book, and we've talked about the role of theatre and the role of the play script and how that can inform somebody's story and how it can be performed by other people. And today we had made a reading, a piece of research by an actor who was playing in the role of Mary Wollstonecraft. So if you want to take a picture of this, do, and it's available from an independent publisher. Just here, I've got some slides, a short selection of our work over the last years, bringing awareness about Mary Wollstonecraft to a wider audience. Okay, so the first one is the Clissold House, which you'll recognise. And that was a a promenade production where Mary Wollstonecraft talked to the audience. She was in role as an actor. She'd researched the role of Mary. But one of the standouts for that was her talking about photography and what was photography. So we used Wollstonecraft as a way of looking into and interrogating our life now. The art book, which we've looked at, and you can see the front of the art book. Unfortunately, Vindication, when we got it out today, we were a bit shocked at the condition of it. So we've had to just leave it on the cushion because it's really, really fragile. But we made our book as a absolute sort of replica of that to describe our journey, interrogating, researching and finding out about Wollstonecraft and also performing her life. Why did we have 3 Wollstonecrafts? We had 3 Wollstonecrafts to represent the diversity of Hackney. And that was very important to us in our play that started at Newington Green and went out onto, it started in the meeting house at Newington Green and went across the road to Newington Green itself. So it was in a public space and people could see it as they went round the green in a bus. Didn't have to necessarily have a ticket. And hopefully that motivates people to find out about her life and times. That's a photograph of one of the box dresses, which is the costume that our actors wore. And it's a specially designed costume. It's a critical costume. So talking about women in boxes, women coming out of boxes, women in cages, according to some of the quotes written by Wollstonecraft. In this one, I think we invited people to take pictures of their mothers and daughters, grandmothers, and we paired them alongside Wollstonecraft as a way of participating in her legacy. Wollstonecraft live on Newington Green, backstage. And here we have the 3 Mary Wollstonecrafts. So they took, the story is that they are making a film of Wollstonecraft's life. So again, Wollstonecraft is in control of her own story. That's the idea. And the idea that history is not fixed, like a bronze memorial with a single story, but that it's flexible and we can make our own stories. So here's our actors on Newington Green. And using the camera to discuss the representation of women. The dresses work to make a sculpture. The three box dresses work to make a sculpture, and you have a memorial there. One of the actors on top of a flight case. Those dresses were taken into the art galleries and suspended. And here you see the travel documents of how we travelled with the Wollstonecraft films and artefacts, and travelled in her name, as she did as a first travel writer, and also just simply a woman who travelled on her own. Wollstonecraft live experience. This is in the gallery here in New York with those quotes. People read the quotes. The writer talked about the play. We read some parts of the play. And then we brought everything back to Newington Green and projected the films that we'd made of the work on Newington Green. So it's an iterative project just to keep people motivated really to find out more about her, and for us to remind people about her, and the idea that people will walk across Newington Green and remember seeing a show there and perhaps want to find out more about her. Participation, celebration, fun. These picnic mats have the quotations of Wollstonecraft on them. And we broadcast this event from the Green worldwide, so we have people coming in to the event. It's a bit bright in here, but that's one of the shots that you saw on the flyer for Hackney Museum of Mary Wollstonecraft floating above the Green. Just final shots here of the end of that event. Public space, bringing Wollstonecraft into the public space. Great. So, thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed this whistle-stop tour of the Wollstonecraft live experience. If you'd like to look at more materials, please do. And we've got a couple more giveaways for you. And one of them is a recent project by Xenia, which is a women's group in Hackney. This is funded by the Heritage Lottery Fund and is a map of local women in Hackney who are overlooked, you know, bringing them to the attention. And there are walks in here. So we've got the walk app, we've got the trailblazing map here. And if anybody would like to take a Stewie stencil, you're also very welcome. So I'll leave them down there. Hello.
How did the archive acquire the book, the original book?
That's a very good question. Elizabeth, do you know that?
I don't actually know. It was a local collection.
I can't hear.
The short answer is I don't actually know. But it might have come from, there was a local history collection at Stoke Newington Library, which was then sort of passed on to the archives. And I think it was probably part of that collection. So, but I don't, yeah, good question actually, yeah. I'll see whether I can find out. But
We'll have a look into that.
yeah.
I have a question. Are there any other events planned, perhaps as part of Hackney History Festival next year? Or any other things?
Oh, so we thought we might do the Wollstonecraft walk this year, but we're not going to do it this year. So you can go and do it. Take your app, take your barcode, and go and do it. And next year we'll do a guided tour of Newington Green and Mary Wollstonecraft.